In 1996, Capcom released Resident Evil for the PlayStation, and over the last 20 plus years continue releasing games in the series with no sign of stopping. The success of the first Resident Evil gave Capcom the idea to hype up the release of the 1998 sequel with a series of tie-in merchandise, action figures, comics, and a novelization of the first game that, unlike many other video game novelizations, are still in print and easily available today. Hi, I'm CB Smith, and we're going to be talking about Resident Evil, the first game, and the novelization that goes with it. And I'm going to do my best not to spoil everything for you guys. The series has seen its share of highs and lows over the years. With the release of Resident Evil 7, it seems to be back on the high. Even more so with the release of a remake of the second game, and with a Resident Evil 3 remake coming out soon, I thought it would be fun to come back to the novelization of the first game that started it all. At least that's what I wrote in the original script before I had to go and build field hospitals to aid overcrowded emergency rooms. Thanks a lot, Corona. Resident Evil: The Umbrella Conspiracy is the 1998 novelization to the 96 game, meaning that this book does not follow the 2002 remake with its added content and different approach to its zombies, monsters, and puzzles. While the remake of the first game is fairly easy to get through various consoles and digital stores, the only way to legally buy the first game is either as an add-on on the PlayStation Mini for a pretty penny, a physical copy in a working version of an older system for an even prettier penny, or over at the PlayStation Store, but only for the PlayStation 3. And even that won't be true for very long, since Sony is planning to close down the PlayStation Store for 3 and Vita in July of this year. Meanwhile, the book is still in print. This is the first time in a long time that a novelization of a product is easier to get than the product itself. Now, I'm not advocating piracy for Resident Evil 1, because it's not stealing if there's no product to steal. Novelizations became popular in the 70s and 80s when videotapes were either non-existent or so expensive that the only way to enjoy something like a movie was either wait for it to come on TV or get the novel and relive the story then. Video games are in the same boat. Shadowkeep, a fantasy game released in 1984, co-written by Alan Dean Foster, also wrote the novel to it. Doom got several tie-in novels with video game novelizations continuing to this day. I would ask how a God of War novel of all things would turn out, but Max Brooks actually managed to write a pretty good Minecraft novel with a story, so anything is possible. With S.D. Perry, she started her writing career with help from her father Steve Perry, collaborating with him on tie-in novels to the Alien franchise. Simon & Schuster, whom owned the rights at the time, also had the publishing rights to the then new Resident Evil series, and were working on deals with Capcom to create a series of novels to both tie over fans of the games in between releases as well as hype new additions to the franchise. With the series reaching its 25th anniversary, I think it's a better time than ever to tackle the first book and the game that started it all. At least that's what I wrote in the revised script before I had to go and Thanks a lot, Corona. The game and novel open up with a series of newspapers describing the disappearances and murders of people in Raccoon City and the involvement of the STARS team to investigate them. Now, it's not specified who the STARS are in the game. It's assumed that they are the Resident Evil universe equivalent of a police SWAT team. But according to the novel and somewhat in later games, they are a donation-funded private military company with branches and operations throughout the world. While the game opens up to a cutscene of Alpha Team fighting Bravo Team's helicopter, the book dedicates almost 50 pages of build-up to that scene, making Umbrella Conspiracy not just a novel of the first game, but a prequel to the second. I know what you're thinking. Of course this is a prequel to the second game. It's a novelization of the first one. But hold on. In these introduction chapters were shown aspects of the game series that appear first in the second game, a history of Raccoon City Police Station, STARS leader Chief Irons, and a character's sister is name dropped, all of which are locations and people never mentioned in the first game. There's also a novel original character named Trent, whom appears throughout Perry's Resident Evil books. He's the shadow figure helping out the characters however he can. He gives Jill a mini-computer that is both a map of the mansion described in much of how it's shown in the game, as well as a checklist of the different keys needed to open the doors throughout the levels. Trent is less of a character you find in a horror story, but more of the mysterious stranger you meet in some melodramatic old spy movie. Yeah, get used to the self-references in the book, cause there's a lot. But these first chapters do let S.D. Perry expand on backstories of the main characters in the game. In the game, you can play as either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. Now, I'm a decent video gamer person or whatever, so I figured I don't need to play beginner, and Chris's storyline is shown to be a little harder since he has less item slots and no lockpicks to get into rooms, unlike Jill, who is
the master of unlocking.
It's an old game. I mean, how hard can it be? The Resident Evil series coined the term survival horror, and that survival part deals with item management. You receive less ammo, and the enemies are harder to kill on the regular difficulty. So to survive the game, you have to learn when to dodge enemies and conserve ammo. Don't try to use a knife, just don't. On beginner mode, you get such a comical amount of ammo at the end, you can easily dispatch every enemy in the game and still have hundreds of rounds, getting rid of the survival part and by extension the horror, making it impossible to die. Jill Valentine gets one of the biggest backstories in the novel. She's the daughter of a master thief sent to jail, trained in lockpicking, making her
the master of unlocking.
She also now has a personal relationship with two of the murder victims, making this not just any other case for her. She also wears a beret, which is never explained in the book or game, whether it's from her being a cadet in some military branch, ROTC, or Girl Scouts. It's just her, quote, lucky hat. The game has some live-action cutscenes in the beginning that many people have over the years pointed out the, let's say, memorable performances.
No! Don't go!
Okay, run. Run. You're being chased by zombie dogs. Probably best to run. But no one has ever really pointed out Jill's beret. While the book describes it as old and worn out over the years, the beret on this actress's head very clearly was just taken out of the plastic the day of shooting. As my old drill sergeant would say, it looks like a fucking chef's hat. Do you know how often we had to shower with this thing on to shape it, and then to literally shave it with a razor so it doesn't look like that? Oh, Jill. Chris Redfield also has ties to the murders, with Chris's friend Billy working for the Umbrella Corporation, contacting Chris about some strange going on in the company. A conspiracy, like an umbrella overlapping everything, an umbrella conspiracy, if you will, where Billy loses contact with Chris shortly before the murders happened. It's also explained that Chris was Air Force before joining STARS, which I call shenanigans. No way would an airman think the best idea to get a rock out of its way would be to punch it. Only a Marine would think of something like that, but only a Marine would be able to actually pull it off.
Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! Where are you? Where are you? Ah! That's the war face! Now let me see your war face! Ah! Bullshit! You didn't convince me!
The game will give you the choice of playing as either of these two characters, and while both go through the same areas and unlock the same puzzles, the ways in which they get around the puzzles and who they interact with are sometimes wholly different. Instead of having the novel split in two and tell the same story twice from both perspectives, Harry does the smart decision, combining the two. Starting with Chris's cutscene in the beginning, having him investigate a room, him shooting his gun, triggering Jill's cutscene of her and Barry Burton investigating the same area, with Chris mysteriously missing in the mansion. The novel follows that story and switches point of views in between not just Jill and Chris, but the rest of the STARS team found in the game. This allows other characters to find puzzle pieces instead of just one to cut back on all the backtracking in the game. I mean it, nearly half of the footage I recorded for this is me running back and forth trying to figure out where the stupid armor key is, and oh, it's in the greenhouse. How did I miss that? Both Jill and Chris meet with characters throughout their storylines that help them along the way. We already mentioned Jill being
the master of unlocking.
Not so much with Chris. While having less item slots, he also has to use those slots to hold on to keys to open places up that Jill can already get to. She can also play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata on piano to unlock a door, while Chris unfortunately can't read music. It's okay, Chris. I've been playing this thing for 10 years and I can't either. In Chris's storyline, you meet up with Rebecca Chambers, the star's medical officer and youngest member. This is her first mission. It's going smoothly. Rebecca in the first game is not so much someone you have to babysit, but she's always asking Chris what she should do. Should she go with him or stay? Should she practice playing piano or not? S.D. Perry really liked Rebecca, so in the novel, while not being experienced, she does at least make choices for herself and has some agency and can pull her weight in situations collecting the puzzle pieces. Get that piano practice in, Rebecca. Zombies be damned. But she's also the one that tells the rest of the characters what's going on in the mansion after finding medical papers and being the only one that can actually understand all the medical jargon. Perry loved this character enough to make her the main character in the sequel novel that's a standalone original book, not adapted to any game. In Jill's storyline, we have Barry Burton. Barry helps out Jill multiple times throughout the game.
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things. Better take it with you.
Gee, thanks Barry, but you know we're going against the living dead, right? Ah yes, the living dead. 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 While all the voice actors aren't going to win any awards, it's Barry's that has lived on in meme status before memes were even a thing. Something about this big burly man of a character, stunted line reading, failing but also succeeding in making the worst dad jokes in what is supposed to be a scary situation of tight hallways with zombies and monsters shambling around every corner is just so welcoming. And yes, in case you were wondering, the line is in the book.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
S.D. Perry does a good job in writing in these characters' point of views different enough for their sections to shine. Jill is more streetwise with her criminal background. Rebecca is book smart but doubtful. Chris is a wild card. Barry is a simple tough guy. And Albert Wesker, the alpha team leader, is cold and calculating in his sections of the book. Whenever he talks in a novel, you can just hear the voice actor's snide, patronizing tone that's in the game.
Where on earth have you been? You disappeared from the hall all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, but I have my reasons.
One thing that's in video games in general that don't exactly work so well in novels would be the many puzzles throughout. Perry justifies their existence in the book by creating a backstory of the mansion they're in. A crazed architect with an infinity for, as Wesker puts it, espionage thrillers complete with mad scientists and a ticking clock. Even so, at one point in the novel, Jill does what many of us wish we could do when stuck on a puzzle in a game and can't figure out what to do and just breaks the glass box to get the key. And Perry gives a wink and a nod to the reader. Apparently, some of the house's tricks could be worked around, providing she ignored a few rules of fair play. And that's the tone of the book. The constant references to other pulp genres is grating at times, but it does put the reader in the right mindset. This is a cheap espionage thriller. It is a trashy novel. It is some kind of game. Which is not bad, it's just a different kind of good. Characters are solving puzzles in a big spooky mansion to get to an underground tunnel system that looks like it belongs in a level of Tomb Raider. And into a guardhouse to fight giant plants, shark monsters, and things that could have once been a spider if spiders ever got to be the size of cattle. This is the tone of the Resident Evil book and game, making this book probably one of the best adaptations it could be. And given the limitations on the business side of tie-in novels, receiving between $5,000 to $12,000 if you're lucky per project, little to no royalties, no ownership of your own creations and ideas within the novel, and very strict deadlines. It's crazy that the book came out as entertaining, fun, and in some aspects regarding characterizations, better than the game it's adapting. That being said, it's a shame that the original game is getting harder and harder to play in lieu of its technically better version in the remakes. But there's a charm to the cheese, the graphics, and voice acting. At least there is the book to enjoy. For one reason or another, Capcom's contract with Perry ended after the novelization to the prequel, Resident Evil 0, leaving 7 novels in this series under her belt. Perry's writing style fitting with more action, gross gore, spy thriller pulp aesthetic, quippy one-liners, wink and nods to the audience, she would have been perfect for a novelization of Resident Evil 4, where all those aspects are put up front and center, playing to all of her strengths as an author. I would have loved to read that, but I also would have liked to see other authors tackle other games in the series, given how each game does have its own special vibe to them. I think Joe Lansdale would have been a perfect choice for RE7, and I'll be covering one of his works adapted in the next video. This is CB Smith, and thanks for taking a page.
Ah, it's the Moonlight Sonata.
Can you play?
My interpretation is off a little. Chris, may I practice for a while?